Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and the United Arab Emirates are presenting Qatar with a list of demands to end the crisis, including cutting ties to the Muslim Brotherhood and al-Qaeda. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson addressed the crisis on Tuesday. Listen.
Our desire is for unity within the Gulf and unity within the GCC, and that we redirect all of our efforts on the war against terror, the war to defeat ISIS and Daesh in the region.
Joining us right now is the co-author of 13 Hours, the inside account of what really happened in Benghazi. He is also the Benghazi attack survivor. Mark Geist is with us right now. Mark, thanks very much for spending the time. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Thank you, Maria.
So how significant do you think this is? I think this is a huge story, that Qatar is being basically ostracized by everybody. It's known to have supported political Islam, including the Muslim Brotherhood. How do you see it?
Well, I think one of the better examples is when we released some of the worst that we had in Guantanamo, where did they go? They went to Qatar, and when they got off the plane, you didn't see them getting off the plane in handcuffs and being any security on them. They got off and they were hugging their people that were accepting them there. And that's a direct reflection on the stance that Qatar has, I believe.
But at the same time, the U.S. has its main military base for the Middle East in Qatar. So how do you see this? I mean, you've got a country that is, everybody says, supports terrorism. They're very close with the Muslim Brotherhood, which a lot of people feel is a terrorist organization, even though the president has not called them out as it yet. But then we've got our military base there.
Well, I think one of the issues there is, as we've seen in all over the Middle East, is you have factions within a specific government that are either supportive of the U.S. or against it, or supportive up front in one area and then also supportive of other groups in different parts of that same government.
Right.
And it's the convoluted part of dealing with the Middle East that we have to navigate around. It's very difficult.
You know, Mark, good to see you, brother. David here. Look, the issue is not just a convoluted nature. We've talked about this before, but also the fact that you have a Sunni-Shia dynamic going on here in the Middle East. And even in Qatar, that's complex. We've had funders of terrorism in Qatar. You stated quite clearly how they come off the plane. That's one example. But what are we going to do about the funding stream that comes out of there, or can we do anything about it?
You know, I don't know if there is. I mean, I think we have to look at it as any issue in the Middle East from a multifaceted approach. I mean, we have to impose sanctions. We have to use other allies in the region to put that pressure on factions within Qatar government to quit their funding of organizations that we're not privy to or that we're not supportive of. I mean, like the Muslim Brotherhood, you know, there's a lot of factions within the Muslim Brotherhood as well, but you look at their actions. I mean, they can say one thing, but you look at the actions of the Muslim Brotherhood, and that tells you whether they're a terrorist organization or not.
Mark, do you think this is a great time, actually, for American diplomacy to step in and make this a mutual conversation? Because we've seen in Saudi Arabia they support Wahhabism, which is actually one of the worst forms of Islam that has happened, and so we could direct conversations on both sides to get not only the Saudi government but also the Qatari government to take down and really enforce their laws and policies against terrorism, including the funding that you're talking about.
Well, of course, I think it's a great opportunity that has been presented, and I think how we approach that is something that's going to be significant to our leadership in the Middle East in the future.
You know, we're seeing right now, there's, you know, all these sort of smaller terrorism attacks. And when you think about this kind of, you know, what's going on in Qatar and what we're seeing out there, and there's higher threats, what do you think is going to happen right now? Should we be concerned?
Well, I think we got to be concerned with terrorism all the time. You know, and their tactics lately have been changed from big dynamic state-backed terrorism to pushing these lone wolf kind of attacks. And I don't necessarily, maybe lone wolf is the wrong way to describe them, because they are influenced and encouraged by other factions such as ISIS and al-Qaeda. But it's easy to get one person in, and it's hard to, you know, we have to be right every day, and they only have to be right once. And having somebody that's already in place here makes it simpler for them or easier for them.
So what should the U.S. do, in your view, right now, in terms of all of these countries saying we're cutting ties with the Qataris? Should the U.S. get into this?
Well, I think we have to. I think we have to provide leadership, and how deep we get into it is, I think, is up to the administration. And, you know, I trust their decisions on that with who's in place both at State Department and Department of Defense and National Security. But we have to utilize these type of opportunities to provide our leadership, to use it and influence those allies in other areas within the Middle East to kind of come around to what our way of thinking is, or at least to our benefit.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty extraordinary yesterday, Kevin Kelly, when we heard the news that Qatar Airways wants to take a big stake in American Airlines. The AMR CEO, he's speaking out this morning, Doug Parker. He's reportedly unhappy as Qatar Airways is government-owned, and they want to buy a 10% stake in American Airlines, according to the Wall Street Journal. What do you make of this?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because of the open skies laws and rules that have been going on, and basically what happened is the Qatari government has been subsidizing the pricing and a lot of for Qatari Airways, right? So Doug Parker is saying, listen, we're not even going to talk or negotiate. We don't want to deal with you at all. Now, what the Qataris could do is they could come in and they can actually purchase up to 4.75% legally, no problem. To get to that 10% threshold, they would have to go through the regulators here in the United States, and they could only own up to a max. Any foreign airline can only own up to a max of 24.75% of a U.S. airline. But Doug Parker wants nothing to do with this, and they were saying they were like, hey, we just want to own you passively. We don't want to.
They say, well, this is an investment opportunity for us.
Exactly.
Is what the Qataris are saying.
There's no such thing as passive ownership when you're dealing with a complex government with that many problems and foreign enterprise like Qatar. So we've got to stay away from
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating that they want to buy this stake just at the same time that all these countries are saying, you support terrorism. And now they want to buy into American Airlines. It's pretty extraordinary, actually. So that's one we're going to be following, obviously, very closely.